Why are African nations increasingly rejecting foreign military presence? Is it a quest for sovereignty, or is it about something far more profound? Recently, Senegal made headlines when its president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, boldly demanded that France shut down its military bases in the country. This is no small decision. It signals a critical moment, not just for Senegal, but for the entire African continent. Stay tuned as we explore the historical, political, and economic forces behind this monumental shift. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the African Web and hit the bell icon so you never miss updates on Africa's unfolding journey towards sovereignty. To fully understand why Senegal is expelling French military forces, we need to take a step back and examine the complex, often tumultuous relationship between the two nations. Senegal, like many African countries, was a French colony for decades. Colonialism didn't just bring economic exploitation, it left deep scars on the nation's identity, political structure, and social fabric. When Senegal gained independence in the 1960s, it entered a new era of self-determination, also it seemed. However, the reality was far more complicated. Although colonial rule officially ended, the structures of control remained intact. France retained significant influence over Senegal's economy, military, and political decisions. For years, Senegalese leaders grappled with this neo-colonial influence. Some accepted it as a necessary evil for economic stability, while others viewed it as an unacceptable compromise on sovereignty. President Faye initially belonged to the former group, believing that cooperation with France could be mutually beneficial. But recent events forced him to reconsider. The turning point came on November 28, 2024. President Faye, once seen as a pragmatic leader willing to work with France, surprised many by demanding the closure of all French military bases in Senegal. This move wasn't just symbolic, it was a clear rejection of France's ongoing influence in the region. Why now? The answer lies in a series of events that unfolded over the past few years. First, the rise of nationalist movements across Africa put pressure on governments to assert their independence. Countries like Burkina Faso and Niger expelled French troops, setting a precedent for others to follow. Second, growing public discontent in Senegal made it politically untenable for President Faye to continue accommodating French forces. Citizens, particularly the younger generation, began to question why their country, despite being independent for over 60 years, still hosted foreign military bases. Social media campaigns, public protests, and grassroots movements amplified these concerns, forcing the government to take action. One event that deeply influenced President Faye's decision was the upcoming 80th anniversary of the Thiaroye Massacre. This tragic event, which occurred on December 1, 1944, remains a painful memory for many Senegalese people. During World War II, thousands of West African soldiers, including many from Senegal, fought alongside French forces. These soldiers, known as Thiaroyes Senegalese, were promised financial compensation and recognition for their service. However, upon returning home, they found themselves betrayed. The French government refused to pay the promised wages, citing budget constraints and other excuses. Frustrated and desperate, a group of soldiers staged a mutiny at the Thiaroye military camp in Dar. The French response was swift and brutal. Troops, led by a French brigadier general, launched a violent crackdown on the mutineers. Official records claim that 24 soldiers were killed on the spot, while 45 others were wounded. Of those injured, 11 later died in hospital. However, eyewitness accounts and oral histories suggest the death toll was much higher, possibly exceeding 300. The massacre was a turning point in Senegal's colonial history. It exposed the exploitative nature of French rule and galvanized the independence movement. Yet, for decades, the event was suppressed. It was neither taught in schools nor widely discussed in public discourse. Even a 1988 Senegalese film about the massacre, Camp Thiaroye, was banned in France and censored in Senegal. On the same day President Faye demanded the closure of French bases, French President Emmanuel Macron finally acknowledged the Thiaroye massacre. In a letter addressed to Senegalese authorities, Macron expressed regret for the incident and recognized the sacrifices made by West African soldiers. President Faye's response was clear and resolute. He welcomed the acknowledgement, but insisted that it must be followed by concrete actions. In a televised address, he stated, "Recognition is important, but is not enough. Our soldiers fought and died for a cause that was not their own. Their families deserve justice, and our nation deserves respect. Maintaining foreign military bases on our soil is incompatible with our sovereignty. For decades, foreign military bases have been a contentious issue in Africa. While some governments view them as a necessary security measure, others see them as a violation of sovereignty. In Senegal, the latter perspective has gained traction in recent years. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, a vocal critic of foreign military presence, articulated this sentiment in a recent speech. Over 60 years after independence, we must ask ourselves why foreign troops still occupy our land. Are we truly free if a third of our territory is under foreign military control? The answer is no. True independence requires self-reliance, not dependence on foreign powers. One of the key reasons foreign powers maintain military bases in Africa is the continent's vast natural resources. Africa is rich in minerals, oil, and agricultural land, making it a prime target for economic exploitation. Consider these statistics. Africa holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves. The continent is home to 12% of known oil reserves. 65% of the world's arable land is located in Africa. These resources are essential for the global economy, particularly for Western nations. Military bases, often positioned near resource-rich areas, serve not only as security installations, but also as tools for economic control. US bases in the Gulf of Guinea secure vital oil and gas reserves, while French bases in the Sahel protect key mining sites. Africa hosts military bases from 13 nations. The US, 29 bases in 15 countries. France, 7,500 troops before recent expulsions. China, Djibouti since 2017. India, expanding in the Indian Ocean. And Turkey and the UAE, Somalia and Eritrea. Despite hosting foreign bases, no African nation has established military bases outside the continent. This asymmetry highlights the unequal power dynamics between Africa and the rest of the world. Senegal's decision to expel French forces is part of a broader trend across Africa. Countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have already taken similar steps, signaling a shift in the continent's approach to foreign military presence. This movement is driven by a desire for true independence and control over national security. It reflects a growing awareness among African nations that sovereignty cannot be compromised. Senegal's decision to demand the closure of French military bases marks a pivotal moment in its history. It is a bold step towards reclaiming sovereignty and redefining its relationship with former colonial powers. What lies ahead for Senegal and other African nations? Will this be the beginning of a continent-wide movement for true independence, or are there challenges that still need to be addressed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the African Web for more insights into Africa's evolving political landscape. The future of Africa is being shaped today. Stay tuned.